Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the NHL News and Rumors Rundown with the Hockey Raiders. My name is Jim Parsons, obviously with thehockeyraiders.com. Lots of news to talk about today in our final THW News and Rumors Rundown before Christmas, because we're not going to be doing one next week, obviously, with Christmas Day happening on Saturday. So here's what we got going on. Tons of COVID-related news, shutdowns, postponements, players being pulled, all sorts of stuff. And then there's also big news on trades and coaching changes and all sorts. So this is a loaded show prior to getting into our break here next week. So a couple things to let you know about. If you want to follow us, you can do so at thehockeyraiders.com. You can go to the Hockey Raiders on Twitter. You can go to the NHL News and Rumors page of the Hockey Raiders. You can go to the Facebook.com page at the Hockey Raiders, and of course our morningskate.io newsletter. You can check that out too. All right, let's get into some of the biggest stories that we're dealing with today as we record this video. The NHL is shutting down teams like crazy. Calgary, Colorado, Boston, Nashville, Toronto, Vancouver. All those games are postponed. Some teams are shut down through the holiday break. Lots going on here. Just so many players that are testing positive for the new variant of the COVID disease. Many of whom are not even sick. They just don't even know until they get told that they've tested positive, and now they're in COVID protocol. And these games are being to the point where there's just not enough players to play them, so the teams are being shut down. Calgary, for example, had I think 31 different people from the organization put on a COVID protocol list, from players to coaches to training staff to all sorts of stuff. So, I mean, it's just getting really, really bad. And there's got to be some talk here now about whether or not the NHL is going to shut down things, pause for a little while, let this blow over, and then get back to it after the Christmas break or New Year's or what have you. The real reason that they've delayed this so far seems to be, one, the Olympic break, and two, the revenue that's going to be lost from shutting down these games. But you have to wonder, at what point is the long-term picture better than the short-term one? And that's what they're dealing with. A team like the Edmonton Oilers, for example, they're still playing tonight against the Seattle Kraken, but they're down a bunch of people. Jesse Puljujarvi was added to the list today. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Duncan Keith, Ryan McLeod, Devin Shore, head coach Dave Tippett, they're all out. So the Oilers are calling up players like Cooper Marody and Seth Griffith from Bakersfield, trying to fill in the roster. Slater Cuckoo's been activated off injured reserve. There's just so much going on, and this is just one of the many teams. But Puljujarvi was slated to play here in a couple hours, and he's been put on the COVID list. So there's just so much news to deal with here as it comes to these sorts of releases. All right, in other stuff, Paul Maurice, former head coach now of the Winnipeg Jets, he decided that he wasn't going to coach the team anymore. He held a press conference, said he resigned his position as the head coach, and just said it was time. He knew that he was probably the, I don't know if you want to say the lowest common denominator or the factor that was going into what's going on with the Jets, and he just felt like they were struggling. It wasn't like he lost the room. It wasn't like they didn't respect him. He just felt they needed a new voice, and it was time to move on. Dave Lowry is going to take over as the interim head coach, and then we'll see what happens. He'll coach all the way through the end of the season, and then Winnipeg will decide what they want to do with the head coaching situation at that point. But his press conference was really quite well done. Very classy, respectful guy. Said, look, this is a great day for Winnipeg, great day for me, and he was excited about the fact that he didn't have to coach anymore. He just knew that coming back repeatedly was kind of draining on him, and it was time to move on, and he didn't want to regret having not stepped aside when he felt it was time to do so. So he's done that. Lots of talk about Jakob Chychrun out of Arizona. There's plenty of trade speculation on the defenseman. It sounds like the Coyotes are just going to gauge the trade market to see what he's worth, and the ask, if it's really out there, is apparently huge. That the Arizona Coyotes are not shy about telling teams, and there's going to be lots of teams that want this guy. He's got a great contract. He's got a term left on his deal. He's young. He scores a ton. He plays a ton of minutes. There's no reason that teams wouldn't be interested in Jakob Chychrun. The Oilers, Toronto, you name it. They're all going to be in on this guy if he is truly available out of Arizona. But the question will be, what will teams be willing to pay to get him? And it was going to be a lot. Somebody said as many as 4 pieces, someone in like the Jack Eichel range. Now, maybe not that high of the pieces, but that they're looking at 4 pieces to get Chychrun out of Arizona. It helps that his contract is so team-friendly. Jason Spezza's suspension was reduced from 6 games to 4 games, and just in time for him to make it to the COVID protocol list. So he was eligible to play in the game that has been postponed tonight between Toronto and Vancouver. He was going to come back in. Gary Bettman decided that because of Spezza's reputation as a non-dirty player, his history in the league, the fact that Neil Pionk wasn't injured for very long, all of these things determined that it was right to decline or deduce or reduce the suspension for Jason Spezza to 4 games. Not that it matters now because he's out of the lineup and the game is not actually happening. But Spezza's suspension was reduced, which is interesting because Gary Bettman doesn't do that very often. He usually doesn't go back on the NHL Department of Player Safety rulings, and this is one instance where he did so. Lots of talk coming out of Montreal still. This has not changed anything with all the changes happening there. Jeff Gordon taking over, Mark Bergevin being out. Lots of trade talk about who's going to be moved. Players with term like Carey Price, Brendan Gallagher, Tyler Toffoli, Jeff Petrie, you name it. They're all in the rumor mill. What the asking price would be or what the Canadiens can get for some of these players is very, very much up in the air. Lots of first-round picks being tossed out there. We know Ben Sherrod's probably going to get a first-round pick as the trade deadline reaches. If Carey Price is out there, he'll probably fetch one. Tyler Toffoli could probably fetch one. And depending on what the Canadiens are willing to do in terms of eating salary or taking the contract back, they might even get more than that. So you never know. So it's going to be a very interesting team to watch. The Montreal Canadiens have a lot of decisions to make depending on where their season goes, how bad they continue to play, how much they've decided to maybe rebuild or retool. We'll be watching all of that this season, heading through the Christmas break and all of the other stuff that goes with it. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. Just a quick reminder, check out the hockeyradio.com for the news and rumors, the newsletter, morningskate.io. You can check that out too. And again, we won't have a video next weekend because of the Christmas break, but we will be back the week after that. So have fun, enjoy the weekend and as many hockey games as there are to watch, and enjoy the holiday season as well. We wish you guys a Merry Christmas from the Hockey Raiders, and we'll talk to you guys soon.